The void between stars had never felt so heavy. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the defiant horizon, her fingers drumming a steady rhythm against the armrest of her command chair as the tactical display flickered with crimson warnings. Beyond the reinforced viewport, the Krellian warfleet hung in space like a swarm of predatory insects. 63 vessels, each one larger than her entire ship, their hulls pulsing with the sickly green glow of plasma conduits that had burned a dozen worlds to ash. The communications officer, Lieutenant Chen, looked up from his station with barely concealed fear etched across his young face. His voice cracked slightly as he reported what everyone on the bridge already knew in their hearts. "Captain, the Krellian flagship is hailing us again. Command Praetor Thexmal demands our immediate surrender. He says this is our final warning before they open fire." Elena didn't move, didn't so much as flinch at the ultimatum that would have sent most species scrambling for escape pods, or broadcasting desperate pleas for mercy across every available frequency. Instead, she allowed herself a slow breath, feeling the weight of 347 souls aboard her vessel, each one trusting her to make the impossible decision that separated survival from extinction. The Defiant Horizon was a science vessel, lightly armed and designed for deep space exploration, not warfare. By every logical calculation, by every strategic analysis the ship's AI had run in the past 6 minutes, they should already be dead. "How long until the Third Fleet arrives?" Elena asked, her voice steady as bedrock. Her executive officer, Commander James Okonkwo, checked his datapad with practiced efficiency, though she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched before he delivered the news. 42 minutes, Captain. Admiral Reeves is pushing the fleet to maximum burn, but they're still on the far side of the Arcturus system. 42 minutes. Elena felt the number settle into her bones like winter frost. The Krellian Empire didn't make idle threats, and their reputation for brutal efficiency had been earned through 3 centuries of conquest that left entire civilizations as footnotes in historical databases. Command Praetor Thexmal himself was a legend of terror, having personally overseen the subjugation of 17 different species, his methods so merciless that even other Krellian commanders whispered about him in their war councils, with something approaching awe. The science station beeped urgently, and Dr. Sarah Kim spun in her chair, her eyes wide with the kind of alarm that only came from discovering something fundamentally wrong with the universe. "Captain, the Krellians are charging their siege cannons. Power signatures are spiking across their entire fleet. If they fire in formation, they'll generate enough destructive force to crack this moon in half." Behind them, hanging in the gravity well of the small planetary body, was Research Station Kepler-7, home to 8,000 civilians, scientists, engineers, families who had come to the frontier to push the boundaries of human knowledge. The station had no shields, no weapons, no chance of survival if the Krellians decided to make an example of it. And Elena knew, with the cold certainty of someone who had studied Krellian tactics for a decade, that Thexmal would absolutely destroy the station. Not out of military necessity, but to prove a point, to demonstrate what happened to species who dared to resist the Empire's expansion into their territory. "Options," Elena said quietly, though every officer on the bridge knew they had already exhausted every viable strategy. Commander Okonkwo's response was measured. Professional, the voice of a career officer who understood when mathematics had rendered hope obsolete. "We could attempt to run, try to draw them away from the station. We might buy the civilians 5, maybe 10 minutes to evacuate, or we could surrender, hope they honor the terms of the Galactic Convention regarding non-combatants." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems and the steady ping of sensors, tracking the Krellian fleet's movements. Everyone present knew that the Galactic Convention meant nothing to the Krellians. They had withdrawn from the treaty 18 months ago, declaring it a weakness that only served to protect inferior species from their rightful place in the cosmic order. Elena stood, smoothing down her uniform with deliberate calm, and walked to the viewport. Out there in the darkness she could see the distant glimmer of Earth, a blue jewel so far away it existed only as a memory of home, a reminder of why humans had ventured into these dangerous stars in the first place. Curiosity, the refusal to be bound by fear or impossibility, the stubborn, perhaps foolish belief that the universe belonged to those brave enough to explore it. "Lieutenant Chen," she said softly, her decision crystallizing like ice forming on a winter lake, "open a channel to the Krellian flagship. All frequencies. Make sure every ship in the system can hear what I'm about to say." Chen's fingers trembled slightly as he complied, and a moment later the view screen flickered to life with the image of Command Praetor Thexmol. The Krellian commander was massive, his chitinous armor gleaming with the decorations of countless victories, his multiple eyes glowing with predatory satisfaction as he gazed at the small human ship that dared to stand before his armada. Elena met his gaze without blinking, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the void with perfect clarity. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Defiant Horizon. You have threatened civilians under human protection. You have violated our territorial sovereignty. You have demanded our surrender." She paused, letting the words hang in the vacuum between their ships. "We refuse. All weapons, prepare to engage. If you want this moon, Praetor, you'll have to go through us first." The bridge erupted in barely controlled chaos as officers rushed to comply with her orders, but Elena never looked away from Thexmol's image. She saw the moment her words registered, saw the commander's surprise shift to something that might have been respect, or perhaps simply amusement at the audacity of a species so willing to embrace its own annihilation. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had just declared war. The silence that followed Captain Vasquez's declaration lasted exactly 3 seconds before Command Praetor Thexmol's laughter echoed across the open channel, a sound like grinding metal that made several bridge officers wince. His translator rendered the Krellian commander's words with mechanical precision, but even the cold digital voice couldn't mask the contempt dripping from every syllable. "Captain Vasquez, your species amuses me. One small vessel, barely armed, crewed by primitives who have spent less than 2 centuries in space, and you dare to challenge the Krellian Empire?" Thexmol leaned forward in his command throne, his multiple eyes gleaming with predatory interest. "I have destroyed entire battle fleets. I have watched civilizations fall before my weapons. What makes you believe your tiny ship can stand against the might of 63 warships?" Elena felt every eye on the bridge turning toward her, waiting for the response that would either justify her seemingly suicidal decision or confirm that their captain had lost her mind. She walked slowly back to her command chair, settling into it with the casual confidence of someone who had just bet everything on a single hand and knew the cards had already been dealt. "You're absolutely right, Praetor," she said calmly, her fingers dancing across her chair's tactical interface. "We can't win a direct engagement. Our weapons are outmatched. Our armor is insufficient, and by every metric of conventional warfare, we should be running or begging for mercy." She paused, letting a small smile touch her lips. But humans didn't become a spacefaring species by following conventional wisdom. "Lieutenant Chen, transmit tactical package Delta 7 to the Krellian flagship. I want them to see exactly what they're dealing with." Chen's hands moved across his console, and a moment later, Thexmol's eyes narrowed as data flooded his screens. Elena watched his expression shift from amusement to confusion, then to something that looked remarkably like concern. The tactical package she had sent contained detailed scans of the moon below them, specifically the mineral composition of its crust and the extensive network of fissures that ran through its geological structure, like cracks in ancient ice. "You see, Praetor, this moon is unusual," Elena continued, her voice taking on the tone of a professor lecturing to a particularly slow student. 93% of its composition is compressed helium-3, with deposits of metastable exotic matter embedded throughout its core. My science team discovered this 6 weeks ago. It's actually the reason we established Research Station Kepler-7 here in the first place. We've been studying the formation mechanisms, trying to understand how such a volatile celestial body could remain stable. Dr. Kim caught on immediately, her face going pale as she understood the full implications of what her captain was suggesting. Commander Okonkwo's eyes widened, and he leaned closer to Elena's chair, his voice barely a whisper. "Captain, are you saying what I think you're saying?" Elena didn't respond to her executive officer. Instead, she kept her attention focused on Thexmol, watching as the Krellian commander consulted with his own science officers, watching as the realization dawned across his armored features like a slow sunrise over a battlefield. "The moon is essentially a massive bomb waiting for the right trigger," Elena said pleasantly. "Our research indicates that a sufficient energy spike, say from 63 siege cannons firing simultaneously, would destabilize the exotic matter deposits. The resulting chain reaction would create an expanding sphere of destruction, approximately 4 light minutes in radius. Everything in that sphere, including your entire fleet, would be vaporized instantly. The explosion would be visible from Earth, 27 light-years away. The communications channel fell silent. Elena could see Thexmol conferring urgently with his officers, could imagine the chaos on the Krellian flagship as scientists ran calculations, confirming or denying the human captain's claims. She knew they would find her data accurate because it was the truth. The moon was incredibly dangerous, which was precisely why the research station had been established at such a careful distance, with protocols designed to avoid any possibility of triggering the cataclysmic event she had just described. "You're bluffing," Thexmol finally said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "You would destroy your own research station, kill 8,000 of your own people just to take my fleet with you? Your species doesn't have the stomach for such sacrifice. We have studied humans extensively. You value individual lives above strategic victory." Elena felt something cold and hard settle in her chest, the weight of command that every captain carried when lives hung in the balance. She thought about the families on the research station, about the children in the education center, about the scientists who had dedicated their lives to pushing humanity's understanding of the universe forward. She thought about her own daughter, Maya, who was celebrating her 8th birthday on Earth, waiting for a message from her mother that might never come. "You're right that we value individual lives, Praetor," Elena said softly. "Every human death diminishes us. We mourn our losses, we remember our fallen. We carry the weight of those who don't come home." She stood again, moving to the tactical display where the Krellian fleet hung like a sword above everything she had sworn to protect. "But what you failed to understand about humanity is that we value freedom more than life itself. We would rather die free than live as slaves. We would rather burn the galaxy to ash than watch our children bow to tyrants." She turned back to the view screen, meeting Thexmol's gaze with absolute certainty. "So here's what's going to happen, Praetor. You're going to withdraw your fleet beyond the heliopause of this system. You're going to send a message to the Krellian High Command that this sector of space is off limits, and you're going to do it in the next 5 minutes. Because that's how long my weapons officer needs to charge our forward plasma array to sufficient levels to trigger the destabilization sequence." Lieutenant Rodriguez at the weapons station picked up his cue flawlessly, his hands moving across his console as targeting systems came online, as power signatures spiked across the Defiant Horizon's relatively modest weapons array. The ship trembled slightly as energy reserves were diverted, as systems that were never designed for this kind of operation began to heat up with potentially catastrophic overload. "Captain," Rodriguez said, his voice steady despite the insanity of what they were about to attempt. "Plasma array charging. Targeting the primary fissure network. Will reach critical threshold in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Elena saw the calculations running behind Thexmol's eyes, saw the moment when the Krellian commander realized that she wasn't bluffing, that the humans really would trigger a moon-destroying explosion rather than surrender. She had gambled everything on a simple truth about her species, that humanity's greatest strength had always been its willingness to look at impossible odds and say, "Not today." "You're insane," Thexmol said quietly. "Your entire species is insane." Elena smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had just won a battle without firing a single shot. "We prefer the term creatively determined. Now, do we have an agreement, or do we all die together in the next 4 minutes? The Krellian commander's expression was unreadable, but Elena could see something shifting in his posture, could see the moment when military pragmatism overcame pride. He had conquered 17 species, but he had also survived long enough to recognize when retreat was the only logical option. Losing a single system was an acceptable strategic setback. Losing his entire fleet, including himself, to a suicidal human captain was an unacceptable waste of resources. "Stand down your weapons," Thexmol finally said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "The Krellian Empire will withdraw from this system. But know this, Captain Vasquez, we will remember this day. We will remember your name. And one day, when you least expect it, the Empire will return to collect the debt your species has incurred." Elena nodded slightly, accepting the threat with the same calm she had shown throughout the entire encounter. "We'll be ready, Praetor. We're always ready. Humanity didn't survive this long by hoping for peace. We survived by preparing for war." The channel closed and the view screen returned to showing the Krellian fleet. For a long moment, nothing happened. and Elena felt her heart hammering against her ribs as she wondered if Thexmol had decided to call her bluff, if the next few seconds would be their last. Then slowly, majestically, the Krellian warships began to turn, their massive engines flaring to life as they broke formation and started the long burn toward the edge of the system. The bridge erupted in cheers, officers embracing each other, tears of relief streaming down faces that had been locked in professional composure just moments before. Commander Okonkwo was grinning like a madman, shaking his head in disbelief at what they had just accomplished. Dr. Kim was laughing and crying simultaneously, her hands trembling as she ran diagnostics to confirm that the Krellians were truly leaving. Elena allowed herself to collapse back into her command chair, feeling the adrenaline that had sustained her through the past 15 minutes finally beginning to drain away, leaving her exhausted and shaking. Lieutenant Chen appeared at her side with a cup of coffee, his young face transformed by a smile of pure admiration. "Captain, that was the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed," he said quietly. "You saved 8,000 lives without firing a single shot." Elena took the coffee gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm cup to stop them from trembling. "I gambled with 8,000 lives, Lieutenant. There's a difference. If Thexmol had called my bluff, if he had decided to fire anyway, we would all be dead right now, and it would have been my fault. But he didn't," Commander Okonkwo said, joining them with his own expression of barely controlled euphoria. "You read him perfectly, Captain. You understood that Krellians respect strength and despise weakness. You gave him a face-saving way to retreat while making it clear that humans won't be conquered without a fight." Elena nodded slowly, but her mind was already moving forward, already thinking about the implications of what had just happened. The Krellian Empire would indeed remember this day, and they wouldn't forget the humiliation of being forced to withdraw by a single science vessel. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was just beginning, and the galaxy had been watching. "Lieutenant Chen, open a channel to Research Station Kepler-7, Elena said, her voice regaining some of its earlier command authority. "Let them know they're safe. Then get me Admiral Reeves. She needs to know that the diplomatic situation with the Krellians just got significantly more complicated." As her crew jumped to comply, Elena stared out at the stars, at the vast darkness punctuated by distant lights that represented countless worlds, countless civilizations, countless opportunities for both wonder and danger. Humanity had declared its presence in this corner of the galaxy with defiance and courage, had proven that they wouldn't be intimidated or conquered without a fight. The defiant horizon had lived up to its name, and somewhere out there, beyond the edge of known space, other species would be receiving the recordings of this encounter, would be watching the moment when a small human vessel stared down an empire and refused to blink. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they were here to stay.